Page 263. Continued. Mary Ann Evans, George Eliot, 1819-1880. In nearly all the writers of the Victorian age, we note, on the one hand, a strong intellectual tendency to analyze the problems of life, and on the other, a tendency to teach, that is, to explain to men the method by which these problems may be solved. The novels especially seem to lose sight of the purely artistic ideal of writing and to aim definitely at moral instruction. In George Eliot, both these tendencies reach a climax. She is more obviously, more consciously a preacher and moralizer than any of her great contemporaries. Though profoundly religious at heart, she was largely occupied by the scientific spirit of the age, and finding no religious creed or political system satisfactory, she fell back upon duty as the supreme law of life. All her novels aim first to show in individuals the play of universal moral forces, and second to establish the moral law as the basis of human society. Aside from this moral teaching, we look to George Eliot for the reflection of country life in England, just as we look to Dickens for pictures of the city streets and to Thackeray for the vanities of society. Of all the women writers who have helped and are still helping to place our English novels at the head of the world's fiction, she holds at present unquestionably the highest rank. Works by George Eliot. These are conveniently divided into three groups, corresponding to the three periods of her life. The first group includes all her early aces and miscellaneous work, from her translation of Strauss, Strauss apostrophe S, Strauss's Leben, Leben, Jesu, Jesu, in 1846 to her union with Lewes, Lewes, in 1854. The second group includes scenes of clerical life, Adam Bede, Bede, Meal on the Floss, and Silas Marner, all published between 1858 and 1861. These four novels of the middle period are founded on the author's own life and experience. Their scenes are laid in the country, and their characters are taken from the stolid people of the Midlands with whom George Eliot had been familiar since childhood. They are probably the author's most enduring works. They have a naturalness, a spontaneity, at times a flash of real humor which are lacking in her later novels. And they show a rapid development of literary power which reaches a climax in Silas Marner. The novel of Italian life, Romola, 1862 to 1863, marks a transition to the third group, which includes three more novels. Felix Holt, Holt, 1866, Middlemarch, 1871 to 1872, Daniel Deronda, 1876, the ambitious dramatic poem The Spanish Gypsy, 1868, and a collection of miscellaneous aces called The Impressions of Theophrastus, Theophrstus, Such, Such, 1879, The general impression of these works is not so favorable as that produced by the novels of the middle period. Page 264. They are more labored and less interesting. They contain much deep reflection and analysis of character, but less observation, less delight in picturing country life as it is, and very little of what we can, inspiration. Some printing mistake. We must add, however, that this does not express a unanimous literary judgment, for critics are not wanting who assert that Daniel Deronda is the highest expression of the author's genius. Para. The general character of these novels may be described in the author's own term, psychologic realism. This means that George Eliot sought to do in her novels what Browning attempted in his poetry, that is, to represent the inner struggle of a soul and to reveal the motives, impulses, and hereditary influences which govern human action. Browning generally stops when he tells his story and either lets you draw your own conclusion or else gives you his in a few striking lines. But George Eliot is not content until she has minutely explained the motives of her characters and the moral lesson to be learned from them. Moreover, it is the development of a soul, the slow growth or decline of moral power, which chiefly interests her. Her heroes and heroines differ radically from those of Dickens and Thackeray in this respect, that when we meet the men and women of the latter novelists, their characters are already formed and we are reasonably sure what they will do under given circumstances. In George Eliot's novels, the characters develop gradually as we come to know them. They go from weakness to strength or from strength to weakness according to the works that they do and the thoughts that they cherish. In Romola, for instance, Tito, as we first meet him, may be either good or bad, and we know not whether he will finally turn to the right hand or to the left. As time passes, we see him degenerate steadily because he follows his selfish impulses, while Romola, whose character is at first only faintly indicated, grows into beauty and strength with every act of self-renunciation. Para. In these two characters, Tito and Romola, we have an epitome of our author's moral teaching. The principle of law was in the air during the Victorian era, and we have already noted how deeply Tennyson was influenced by it. With George Eliot, law is like fate, F-A-T-E. It overwhelms personal freedom and inclination. Moral law was to her as inevitable, as automatic as gravitation. Tito's degeneration and the sad failure of Dorothy and Lydgate, Lydgate, in Middlemarch may be explained as simply as the fall of an apple or as a bruised knee when a man loses his balance. A certain act produces a definite moral effect on the individual, and character is the added sum of all the acts of a man's life, just as the weight of a body is the sum of the weights of many different atoms which constitute it. The matter of rewards and punishments therefore need no final judge or judgment, since these things take care of themselves automatically in a world of inviolable moral law. Para. Perhaps one thing more should be added to the general characteristics of George Eliot's novels. They are all rather depressing. The gladsomeness of life, the sunshine of smiles and laughter, is denied her. It is said that once when her husband remarked that her novels were all essentially sad, she wept and answered that she must describe life as she had found it. Para. What to read? George Eliot's first stories are in some respects her best, though her literary power increases during her second period, culminating in Silas Marner, and her psychological analysis is more evident in Daniel Deronda. On the whole, it is an excellent way to begin with the freshness and inspiration of the scenes of clerical life and read her books in the order in which they were written. In the first group of novels, Adam Bede is the most natural and probably interests more readers than all the others combined. The Mill on the Floss has a larger personal interest because it reflects much of George Eliot's history and the scenes and the friends of her early life. The lack of proportion in this story, which gives rather too much space to the girl and boy experiences, is naturally explained by the tendency in every man and woman to linger over early memories. Stop. Para. Silas Marner is artistically the most perfect of George Eliot's novels, and we venture to analyze it as typical of her ideals and methods. We note first the style, which is heavy and a little self-conscious, lacking the vigor and picturesqueness of Dickens and the grace and naturalness of Thackeray. The characters are the common people of the Midlands, the hero being a linen weaver, a lonely outcast who hoards and gloats over his hard-earned money, is robbed, thrown into utter despair, and brought back to life and happiness by the coming of an abandoned child to his fire. Page 265. In the development of a story, the author shows herself first a realist by the naturalness of a character and the minute accuracy with which she reproduces their ways and even the accents of their speech. Second, a psychologist by the continual analysis and explanation of motives. Third, a moralist by showing in each individual the action and reaction of universal moral forces, and especially by making every evil act bring inevitable punishment to the man who does it. Tragedy, therefore, plays a large part in the story. For according to George Eliot, tragedy and suffering walk close behind us or lurk at every turn in the road of life. Like all her novels, Silas Marner is depressing. We turn away from even the wedding of Eppie, E-P-P-I-E, which is just as it should be, with a sense of sadness and incompleteness. Finally, as we close the book, we are conscious of a powerful and enduring impression of reality. Silas, the poor weaver, Godfrey Cass, C-A-S-S, the well-meaning, selfish man, Mr. Macy, M-A-C-E-Y, the garrulous and observant parish clerk, Dolly Winthrop, the kind-hearted country woman who cannot understand the mysteries of religion and so interprets God in terms of human love. These are real people whom, having once met, we can never forget. Para. Romola has the same general moral theme as the English novels, but the scenes are entirely different and opinion is divided as to the comparative merit of the work. It is a study, a very profound study of moral development in one character and of moral degeneration in another. Its characters and its scenes are both Italian, and the action takes place during a critical period of the Renaissance, R-E-N-A-I-S-S-A-N-C-E movement, when Savonarola, S-A-V-O-N-A-R-O-L-A, was at the height of his power in Florence. Here is a magnificent theme and a superb background for a great novel, and George Eliot read and studied till she felt sure that she understood the place, the time, and the people of a story. Romola is therefore interesting reading in many respects, the most interesting of her works. It has been called one of our greatest historical novels, but as such it has one grievous fault. It is not quite true to the people or even to the locality which it endeavors to represent. One who reads it here in a new and different land thinks only of the story and of the novelist's power. But one who reads it on the spot which it describes and amidst the life which it pictures is continually haunted by the suggestion that George Eliot understood neither Italy nor the Italians. It is this lack of harmony with Italian life itself which caused Morris and Rossetti and even Browning, with all his admiration for the author, to lay aside the book, unable to read it with pleasure or profit. In a word, Romola is a great moral study and a very interesting book. But the characters are not Italian, and the novel as a whole lacks the strong reality which marks George Eliot's English studies. Stop. Minor novelists of the Victorian age. In the three great novelists just considered, we have an epitome of the fiction of the age, Dickens using the novel to solve social problems, Thackeray to paint the life of society as he saw it, and George Eliot to teach the fundamental principles of morality. The influence of these three writers is reflected in all the minor novelists of the Victorian age. Thus, Dickens is reflected in Charles Reade, Thackeray in Anthony Trollope and the Bronte sisters, and George Eliot's psychology finds artistic expression in George Meredith. To these social and moral and realistic studies, we should add the element of romance from which few of our modern novelists can long escape. The 19th century, which began with the romanticism of Walter Scott, returns to its first love like a man glad to be home in its delight over Blackmore's Lorna Doone, Lorna Doone, and the romances of Robert Louis Stevenson. Para. Charles Reade, Reade. In his fondness for stage effects, for picturing the romantic side of common life, and for using the novel as the instrument of social reform, there is a strong suggestion of Dickens in the work of Charles Reade, 1814-1884. Thus his Peg, P-E-G, Uffington, Woffington, is a study of stage life from behind the scenes. A Terrible Temptation is a study of social reforms and reformers. And Put Yourself in His Place is the picture of a working man who struggles against the injustice of the trade union. His masterpiece, The Cloister and the Hearth, 1861, one of our best historical novels, is a somewhat laborious study of student and vagabond life in Europe in the days of the German Renaissance. It has small resemblance to George Eliot's Romola, whose scene is laid in Italy during the same period. But the two works may well be read in succession as the efforts of two very different novelists of the same period to restore the life of an age long past. Page 265. Anthony Trollope, Anthony Trollope. In his realism, and especially in his conception of the novel as the entertainment of an idle hour, Trollope, 1815 to 1882, is a reflection of Thackeray. It would be hard to find a better duplicate of Becky Sharp, the heroine of Vanity Fair, for instance, than is found in Lizzie Eustace, Lizzie Eustace, the heroine of the Eustace Diamonds. Trollope was the most industrious and systematic of modern novelists, writing a definite amount each day, and the wide range of his characters suggests the human comedy of Balzac. His masterpiece is Barchester Towers, 1857. This is a study of life in a cathedral town and is remarkable for its minute pictures of bishops and clergymen with their families and dependents. It would be well to read this novel in connection with The Warden, Warden, 1855, The Last Chronicle of Barset, Barset, 1867, and other novels of the same series, since the scenes and characters are the same in all these books, and they are undoubtedly the best expression of the author's genius. Hawthorne, Hawthorne, says of his novels, quote, "They precisely suit my taste, dash, solid and substantial, and ... just as real as if some giant had hewn, Hewn, a great lump out of the earth and put it under a glass case, with all the inhabitants going about their daily business and not suspecting that they were being made a show of, unquote. Charlotte Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, Charlotte Bronte. We have another suggestion of Thackeray in the work of Charlotte Bronte, 1816 to 1855. She aimed to make her novels a realistic picture of society, but she added to Thackeray's realism the element of passionate and somewhat unbalanced romanticism. The latter element was partly the expression of Miss Bronte's own nature and partly the result of a lonely and grief-stricken life, which was darkened by a succession of family tragedies. It will help us to understand her work if we remember that both Charlotte Bronte and her sister Emily turned to literature because they found their work as governess and teacher unendurable and sought to relieve the loneliness and sadness of their own lot by creating a new world of the imagination. In this new world, however, the sadness of the old remains, and all the Bronte novels have behind them an aching heart. Charlotte Bronte's best-known work is Jane Eyre, Jane Eyre, 1847, which, with all its faults, is a powerful and fascinating study of elemental love and hate, reminding us vaguely of one of Marlowe's tragedies. This work won instant favor with the public, and the author was placed in the front rank of living novelists. Aside from its value as a novel, it is interesting in many of its early passages as the reflection of the author's own life and experience. Shirley, Shirley, 1849, and Villette, Villette, 1853, make up the trio of novels by which this gifted woman is generally remembered.